We on?
We
Let
are
me know.
on. We're on.
Right now? Hi, guitar lovers. Thanks for tuning in and for last week. Hope you're all safe and healthy at home. And I'm glad to be back. This has become the highlight of my life. More fun than lutherie. No, I'm just kidding. It's not, but I love it. So we have a bunch of questions again. Nice treats for everybody and a little bit of show and tell. I love show and tell because they didn't have that a lot when I grew up in Catholic schools. But my kids, both my daughters, love show and tell, so it's my chance too. And of course, we have Susan Hilbert back there, our director and our camera woman.
Howdy, everyone.
That's Susan right there. And welcome. And let's get the show on. Do we got any questions today, Susan?
Well, today, Dan, we're using something called the magic mailbox.
The what?
The magic mailbox.
The magic mailbox.
This magic mailbox takes digital questions
You cracked me.
online, puts them into paper format, just for you.
Awesome.
Yep, put the flag up.
And I'm not sure what platform it came in from. He's got a question saying, Dan, I wondered what you guys recommend is the best for me for putting closed gear locking tuners, 3 on the side, on an electric Gretsch double jet cutaway with a Bigsby. It's the cheaper Chinese Gretsch, but still sounds awesome. And I want really good, strong, and reliable tuners to upgrade from current original tuners. Mine is the sapphire blue color. Andre. Well, I did look up that model on the internet. I didn't see any sapphire, but they got some killer colors. And I thought about that. And I picked out a set of tuners that just might be what you want. These are new to me. I just happened to be going on tuners and saw these. And these are Kluson Revolution tuning machines, the ultimate upgrade. They're a 19-to-1 gear ratio. These are gold plated. I think yours is gold plated, right? And you want to measure the hole spacing where the screws go in. I can tell you what these are. I'll get my measuring device here. It's the caliper. And if you look on the website, if you're buying tuners, scroll down and we have drawings of all the hole spacing, what size hole is required. And these are right about 15/16 of an inch hole spacing. And the peg head hole's got to be 25. I happen to grab the ones here that aren't locking, but they look much the same, but have the locking control on the back. 19-to-1 is a fine ratio. That's kind of a new ratio to me also. I'm all about how fine a tuner can tune, as you know from last week. Hope that helps. Magic mailbox. It's coming. Well, we have a little technical difficulty here. We're new to this. It's on its way.
Okay, here we come, here we come.
Magic mailbox. I think I like this. There's no fishing around with these. How long should I let a kit acclimate in my house before I start to build it? From Roy R. on YouTube. I live in Florida and my guitar kit is due today. How long should I wait to open it? I'm waiting 3 days. If a customer brings me a guitar, explain to them that I have to meet them outdoors You can't invite them into the shop. I'm wearing gloves and a mask, and most of them are wearing masks also, I found out. And I just let it sit. I'll set it in the back of my shop for 2 or 3 days before I open it and handle it. And even then, I may wipe it down, but usually everyone that's brought me something has said, I just wiped everything down. And that's really a nice thing to do. So I bet you can't wait to get at it. I would be.
Mailbot keeps on coming. There's so many letters.
I like the magic mailbox. It's got StewMac colors. Oh, this is a big one.
It's a big one.
Oh, it's a photo. From Contrast Collective on Instagram. Dan, how do I repair this damaged binding? I dropped the guitar while transporting it to the spray booth. How best to fix and clean it up before putting nitro on it? Whoa. I want to show this to everybody. It looks to me, I don't know what style of guitar this is. It looks like maybe it's a Tully style. But I can see, look at this. Man, it must have really dropped on cement or something because there's little chips of dirt into that plastic. It almost looks burned. I'd like to hear more about this, and maybe when you fix this, you'd send us a picture of it. I think what I would do is, first I would take a skirt or a smooth file and a chisel, and I'd go over the top and knock off anything that's proud of the surface so I can really see how bad the binding is. And then I would do probably one of two things. I might take a Dremel tool and route along this edge and remove binding, all that, what looks like burned, all the crushed stuff. And then I'd have 2 joints to piece and a new piece of binding. And sometimes I'll do that with a square butt joint. Sometimes I'll make a scarf joint. And I'd glue it on with Bind-All because it's a solvent-based glue. And it would melt the ends together when you push the piece in. Another thing you can do is take the same binding that you have here, little chunks and pieces so it melts quickly, and you'll get a paste that's like frosting. And then I would tape off the sides there a bit and tape off along the top with some low-tack tape. And I'd smear it in there like it was frosting and let it dry for 24 hours or even longer because it'll solidify and look just like the binding. And then you can scrape it and file it flush. You still may have some bare wood along that edge. See where the wood is scraped off, or I don't know how that happened. That might take some touch up with an artist brush and some color tone stains, something like that. And if you have an airbrush, I'd probably tape it off and airbrush that and just increase that sunburst a little bit. Yeah, I would love to see this when you're done. Definitely. I hear something rolling towards me. I don't know how she comes up with this stuff. From Christopher Hall on YouTube. Hello, Dan. I'd love to hear your story about making a guitar for Jerry Garcia. Well, that's easy. It's probably be a long one, but they can make it short. In 1967, our band, the Prime Movers in Ann Arbor, we had a blues band. We opened up for Jerry Garcia and the Dead at West Park in the band shell. And that was the greatest thing because Jerry was such a friendly guy. All the guys were. And we just hung out for the afternoon afterwards and talked. And when Jerry found out that I had a guitar repair and building shop, he was curious right away and wanted to come over. Of course, I was thrilled. And he came to my house and saw the stuff that I was doing there. One of them was I had an old D18 Martin, 1939. It was a basket case when I got it. It didn't have a neck. So that was the first time I ever made an acoustic guitar neck. And I made a neck of mahogany for it. It was a killer guitar, by the way. I don't have it anymore. And I put an ebony fingerboard on it, not rosewood. And I inlaid it with numbers, number 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 12. they were with a jeweler's saw cut out of ivory, and they were big. And he really liked that. And I was making a walnut Stratocaster at the time for a friend of mine in Ann Arbor, Jeff Jones. He still has it. And Jerry liked that idea, but he wanted one made out of that same walnut with the brass nut. That was the first brass nut I ever made. And he didn't want a tremolo on it. He wanted a tunematic bridge on it. That was something else I'd never done. And he said he'll be in touch. And that was it for a while. At the end of that summer of '67, our band was invited to San Francisco by Michael Bloomfield, who was out there just starting the Electric Flag. And he would get us jobs if we came out. So we packed up the van and drove to California and stayed for a month. And he did get us gigs. And we lived on the floor of the heliport in Marin County, in Sausalito. And that was where the helicopters came in, and there was giant hangars for helicopters. And one of the hangars you had Quicksilver Messenger was practicing. One was the Flag. There was a sloop in the river that came in where Larry Coryell lived on a sloop, a sailboat. And we slept on the floor. And then in the morning, the Flag would come in about 11 o'clock to practice, and we'd get the boot. And we'd have to go around town all day and do stuff. And one morning, Mike came in and woke us up and said, "You guys are playing at the Fillmore tonight, and you're opening for Cream." We go, "Oh, no, we're not." It was too scary, but we did. He said, "You have to, because the band can't make it." One of the members was ill. I think it was Barry Goldberg. Somebody couldn't do it, so we did. And we drove it across the bridge into San Francisco and across the Golden Gate Bridge, and probably got there about 3 o'clock to set up. And we came in the side of the auditorium. Bill Graham was there, and we're lugging our equipment in, and he stood at the top of the steps going up to the stage, and he goes, "You don't need amps. We have amps." And he pointed, and there were a stack of Marshalls that would have been Eric Clapton's, and a stack of twin reverbs that would have been Bloomfield's. He goes, "You can use this." My older brother said, "Out of the way, MFer. If we don't use our amps, we're not playing." So we did. We lugged. Michael had a concert amp for his harp. I had a deluxe. Our bass player, Eileen Silverman, we had one of the first girl bass players I'd ever known of. She was playing through an Ampeg B18, so it was a small combo. And when the curtains opened, they said, "From Detroit, Michigan, the Prime Movers Blues Band." And the curtains opened, and up on the ceiling was the huge fishnet that covered the whole ceiling, full of hundreds of balloons, and they pull a string. And there's all these hippies out there, stoned out of their minds, and these balloons are falling down, and it was just so nerve-wracking. And we had to start out, and I was a little out of tune in the key of F. That's a hard key to play in anyway. And I know we were doing the Junior Wells song, "You Gotta Help Me." It probably goes back to Sonny Boy, really. So that was pretty cool. And while I was there that same week, I met Jerry again. He was playing down on the beach somewhere, Muir Beach, I think it was called. He said, "I haven't forgotten about that Strat." Well, it was about 2 or 3 years till he finally called me in 1970 and said, "I'd like to get that Strat now." And 71, it would have been 71. So I finally made it for him, and my wife and I and our young daughter Meredith, who was 1 year old, went out to California with her parents into the Napa Valley in St. Helena, up in the mountains, and her Uncle Alex owned a grape ranch up there. And Jerry drove up to get the guitar in a Porsche up the mountainside. It was awesome. And he gets out, and there's a picture I have. Maybe I can get it for one of these events that we're doing here. And there's a movie. He hands me the money, and I go, "No, 9." And that's a lot of money back then. And then I never saw Jerry again until I moved down to Athens, Ohio, and StewMac, and went and interviewed his tech. Dave Parrish up in Columbus when the Dead played there, and that was a ball. So that's the story. And right now I'm making some replicas of that with my old friend and partner, Brian Gallup. And we'll see where that goes. We're in the midst of it right now.
Cool story, Dan. Everyone's saying cool story.
It's just a story.
Hey, I just wanted to jump on here real quick, say hi. I'm all messed up. And just wanted to say we're having some not so great internet going on right now. We were having some ups and downs, so we apologize for that. But we're going to try to make it as smooth as possible and hang with us.
Don't go away.
Don't go away. Let's do the next question.
Bring that old mailbox up here.
Ooh, I have a feeling this is a good one.
From Sid O'Thule on YouTube. Well, he says, Dan, since I found your channel, I've had a huge itch of making a base of my own since I love making stuff. Well, I hope you do. Hope you do make it. My question is if a pure natural oil finish and then wax would be adequate, or would I need to use something like a Danish teak oil and then wax? Also, if I want to hand paint any designs on the body, would the oil destroy them, or should I just paint it afterwards and then apply the wax? Whew, that's sort of out of my jurisdiction. I'm a lacquer guy. So I contacted a good friend of mine, and Susan has his answer back there on the bench. And that's Jeff Jewett of Homestead Finishing in Cleveland, Ohio. Jeff is a master cabinet maker, a great guitar builder, and also runs Homestead Finishing, where he makes the color tone finishes for StewMac and lots of other products. And he sent me a good answer, and we're trying to rustle it up over here.
Oh, brother.
Okay.
Sorry about that, folks.
It's okay. We're new to this game, but it's a good answer, though, because I went to an expert. When I'm no expert, I know experts. And that's pretty important in your life as a builder or repairman. Don't do things that you don't know. Find someone that does. Don't be ashamed that you don't know it.
Jeff. Okay,
I may have to go back and find this.
Sorry, folks.
We may come back to this then.
Yeah. Had you written it down or typed it out?
It's on, it was typed right with this one. Let's take another one.
Okay. I'll find it.
I can turn my iPhone on and get it off that while we're doing something else.
How about I'll find it while we have another question. We'll come
That's
right
good.
back to
Sorry
it.
about this.
We have so many, but I promise we're
But
gonna
this
come
is a
back
good
to that
one, and he deserves an answer. If you get my iPhone, I can turn that on and read it off the email.
You got it.
This is under building, how to carve a top, from Cone on YouTube. What's the best way to do a carved top if you don't have a duplicator machine? And I carved about 3 Les Paul tops in the early 70s. One was out of the Albuquerque, the other 2 were maple. I think the tools I used back then, I still use them. I got these in 1969 from Woodcraft Supply, the original one in Massachusetts. These are spoke shaves. These are spoon bottom spoke shaves. There's 2 different curved bottom ones here. And in maple, that's a lot of work. And your hands are gonna get hot, maybe even blistered. And the way I did it was I took the Les Paul top of maple and I drew radial lines all around it in pencil and set it on the drill press. It had already been cut to shape, got the cutaway and it was smooth. And I drilled holes at different depths. So I would go very shallow at first, get a little deeper towards the edge. it took quite a while and there were hundreds of holes. But that got rid of a lot of wood for one thing, and it gave me a stopping point with my planes. Now, funny you should ask that because I'm just about to build my first archtop guitar. I'm pretty excited about it. And hold on. I've never done it, and what I'm going to do is first I'm going to go through this archtop guitar book by Bob Benedetto, who's an old friend and one of the master archtop builders in the world. And I just got the book, but look at this. I just got spruce for the top and wood for the back and sides. And I'm using a different set of planes for this. Since I had those spoke shades so long ago, I graduated to on bigger jobs using an Ibex 90mm plane, round bottom. I've had that a long time. But for this build, I have my first ever, made by Bob Benedetto himself, his wood-bodied planes. They're absolutely beautiful. That's a flat one, and here's a curved one. They're just fresh out of the box. Look at that beauty. I've seen these in the catalog and on the website, but I didn't really have a reason to need it until now, because I'm going to follow his book. And when I looked at the book, I found that on page 25, here's where he's carving. Got beautiful photos in it. On page 25, and he's drilling holes in it. See it? I felt pretty good about that because that's what I thought of myself in 1969 or 70. That gives you a place to stop. I don't know if you're thinking of carving an archtop guitar or a Les Paul, but I would certainly think about picking up this book to learn everything about carving that Bob knows. I think he has these on DVDs and videos too. This is the second volume, but it's my first. And it won't be long until I get a chance to see how that thing's gonna work. For this little guy. Well, it's gonna be some work. I think I'll have to learn how to set the blade on this one.
The thing is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It's like a work of art.
I got some learning to do here. That's what I'm going to do. Carve an archtop and
Could you use it to skin a potato? Or a
you
carrot?
can skin potatoes. I'd use the flatter one for that. It would just take, that's a good idea. Or, yeah, but I wouldn't want this to get on potatoes. Oh,
No.
it's lovely. I know that, I think he hand makes these.
I mean, he
That's
must.
hard to believe.
They're
I thought he'd be busy building guitars, but I know how much fun it is to make stuff. Oh, mailbox.
So Dan, Jeff Jewett is actually in the audience right now, and I found the answer that.
Hi, Jeff. Sorry, we lost your answer.
Yes,
because it's
I wanna
so good.
Apologize to Jeff, but here we go. We're all set on track. Should we remind people of the question, or is it all good?
This is, once again, I'll go back to it in case someone new is here. He wants to build a bass, and he's going to build his first bass, Sid O'Toole, on YouTube. Since I found your channel, I've had a huge itch of making a bass my own since I love making stuff. My question is if a pure natural oil finish and then wax would be adequate for a finish, or would I need to use something like a Danish teak oil and then wax? Also, if I want to hand paint any designs on the body, would the oil destroy them, or should I paint it and afterwards apply the wax? Jeff said, well, I said, I hope you do build it. And to answer your question, my finishing expertise is in the lacquer field, but I know an expert, as I said, that's Jeff Jewett of Homestead Finishing. He's a master furniture and guitar maker who has written many books on finishing and videos. So here's what Jeff says. Thank you, Jeff. You have several parts to your question, so I'm dividing it up a bit. A pure, quote unquote, pure oil like linseed or tongue oil is a nice natural finish for wood and provides a safe, non-toxic, which is important often, application and the finish afterwards. Waxing helps to give it some gloss and a little bit extra protection. However, it's not very durable if you play the instrument a lot and will require cleaning and re-oiling and waxing every so often if you want it to look nice. But the good news is you don't have to strip the old finish off. Just remove the wax, steel wool the old finish, and apply so you can upkeep it over the years. You can step up protective qualities and gloss a bit by using Danish oil, or even better, a product called True Oil. I've played around with that. A lot of electric guitarists love the feel of necks that have this product applied. Typically, this product doesn't need waxing. That's the True Oil. You should apply several coats, you should apply several coats and more on certain woods. With regards to painting, artist's acrylic paint can be applied over any finish as long as it's fully cured and sanded lightly with 320 grit sandpaper. If the guitar is going to be played, I would apply a clear finish over the paint to protect it. I wouldn't use oil though. I would brush or wipe on several coats of a water-based finish like color tone. If you are going to paint it, then hang it up on a wall to look at it. You don't need to apply the clear finish. Thanks from Jeff Jewett, Homestead Finishing. He's a buddy.
Thanks, Jeff. Magic mailbox. Coming in fast.
It's getting a little heavy. General question here is from acoustic 333. Hi, Dan. What are a few questions that you should ask when trying to find the right tech or luthier? Well, I wouldn't mind if someone came into my shop and politely said, do you mind if I see some of your work? I'm interested in getting a nut made and maybe some fret stressed or new frets. Do you have anything that I can look at? And do you have any finished instruments hanging that you'd build? And that would be a good way to judge. Of course, you want to get a feel for the person themselves. If it was me, I'd say, is there any chance I could have a little tour of your workshop and see what it's like and how you do it? You could learn a lot just by going into the shop and looking around. If you walked into my shop and looked around, you might head the other way, at least today, because it's pretty messy. So don't be afraid to ask a good, reputable luthier some questions. They should be glad to tell you.
Right. Are you the only one in Athens, or are there several?
Me?
Yeah.
Solo repair shops?
No, yeah, luthiers in general.
No, we have luthiers all over Athens. Gosh,
Really?
this is the home of Stuart McDonald. We have, at least 9 or 10 luthiers in this town, repairers, builders, and I could rattle off names forever. And I've worked with most of them at StewMac. Todd Sams, Elliot, John Connery, Eric Coleman, Don McCrosty, and et cetera, et cetera.
In any big town, you'll find dozens of them.
In a big town, I bet you would find at least 3 or more. If you were in LA, gosh, I have no idea. In small towns, you may not find anyone. Some people drive here for an hour and a half to get here from down south Kentucky, and because there's nothing around there. A lot of my business is actually people coming and checking me out, and there's been hundreds of them. From Peter Rolick on the YouTube community page. Does a Resonator guitar body have braces? Hi, I would like to build someday a Resonator guitar, and I just wondered, does it have any braces except the brace under the fretboard? Thanks a lot. Well, I'm assuming that you mean a wooden Resonator guitar, like an old duoling or something like that. Probably not. You're not making a metal body like a National. I do have I'll be right back. I have a guitar I can show you that might help. This guitar's been here a while. It was a big problem coming in, and sometimes I don't get a chance to finish one in a hurry. So if this fellow's watching, he'll know I got it back out and working. This is a National Steel, which has a cone in it, Resonator cone, and a sound well, but no braces. And this is much the same as a wood-bodied Dobro National. The wood body has a wooden ring for the cone. The wood body has a stick and a neck, and they come right out. One reason this one came in is because someone worked on it, went to reset the neck, and they cut a lot of wood away from right in here. I've replaced it. I haven't finished over it. And the stick was broken. This stick is what holds it to the butt end. I re-glued the stick, and then I shored it up with some maple epoxied on the sides of it to give it strength. Now, if you look under that, there's a thin little area where it slides over the metal. Hard to get right there. That slides over the top. On this model, there's 3 holes in the fretboard, and they hold screws, and later are plugged with dots. And the stick screws down here, and it's all about getting that stick at the right angle so it can play. This one had very high action. You'd have to play it with a bar, I would think. So I'm resetting the stick, which means I'm removing some wood here so I can tip the neck back. But I only got this far, and if you look closely at the holes in the fingerboard, I'm not quite lined up with the metal yet. That's because I have all this extra wood that I put there that I'm going to carve to fit the body till those holes line up, because they never got changed. I hope that helps.
I love that thing. It just
Yeah,
looks
this is
cool.
going to be great. And I've been back working on it with the virus going on because I'm locked up here, and I've gotten a few of my customers' guitars out. They've been very patient, and I'm trying to catch up on them so that.
Want me to take that from you?
Sure, just set her down in the case.
I'd be happy to.
Don't close it on that
You
top
got it.
because it's not fastened down.
Well, Dan, are you up for taking a question from the live audience?
Sure.
I think it's a good one. This
You
is
know best.
from Codetta South. Has a question about when repairing a cracked acoustic top, how important is it to use a cleat made of the same species of wood? I just repaired my first top and had to use rosewood on spruce, sadly.
You put rosewood into spruce. Now, is that question heard on the live on the line?
I think they can hear it just fine.
I'd want to know what kind of guitar it was, what model, how old it was, how did the crack get there? Was it a dryness crack? Just in the winter it dried out? And I'm surprised if you had to use rosewood in a spruce top. So not knowing what the model is, I would say in a case like that, depends on the time of year that the guitar comes in. A lot of guitars will dry out so much in heat in the winter that the spruce can crack. But sometimes if you take that guitar and humidify it, the crack will close right back up again, and then you can get inside and just move it open a little bit and work glue into it. And if it stays flush, just leave it. If it doesn't stay flush, I would put a wax paper on top of the crack and a thin acrylic caul and a clamp to keep it level while I glued it. And a good way to close a crack is if this was the top, you take some stretchy masking tape and press it down on one side of the crack onto the finish and pull it over the crack and then put it down, and it'll stretch back in and pull the crack together. As far as putting a cleat, by a cleat you mean a small patch of wood inside, underneath the crack to support it and hopefully hold it together from opening up again. That's a judgment call that you have to make yourself from experience. And many luthiers would say yes, many would say no. I don't think it's necessary to put a cleat on every crack that you fix. It sometimes will split right around it the next year, or even within months. Sometimes it doesn't. If it glues nicely, I would leave it and not cleat it and see what happened. And you won't know that until another season goes by. But I have definitely cleated a lot of cracks in a lot of situations. And
do you try to use the same species of wood for the cleat that you do for the?
Oh, you mean that
top?
In this case the cleat is what was rosewood?
Right.
Oh, I thought you meant you were putting a piece of wood into the top. No, it probably wouldn't matter. I would use spruce.
You try to
prettier.
keep the same sequence.
You know, we do have tools at StewMac that are cleating tools, and if you check them out, we have some cleats you can already buy that are lovely. Some are made of rosewood, some are made of mahogany, some are made of spruce. I just like to put a very gentle, thin one in there if I'm doing it. The master violin repairers for hundreds of years have used cleats. If you look in some of the greatest violin tops, there's cleats all over the place. Crack here and crack there.
We just did a video about cleats.
We did do a video about cleats, didn't we? I don't think that's out yet.
I think it's out.
We did. No, that was, we just did a video on a tool that comes from Joe Glazer's shop,
Yeah.
Scott Holyfield.
Yeah.
Scott Holyfield, the repairman down there, has come up with a clever tool that actually takes a wooden cleat that you're placing inside. You find out where it's going, and it's got two little magnets in it. And then you take this, I could actually go get a piece.
Yeah,
I'll be right
I'm
back.
sure we have one just laying out because we were working on that just recently.
Finding a little cleat tool might be tough.
Well, we don't need to.
Well, it's laying around, but it's a
Oh.
small plastic tool that
We'll show them next week.
it takes a little cleat made out of wood. They're made on a machine that cuts lots of them out. And if you take this magnetic film on the top of the guitar and take the cleat tool with the magnet, when you get inside, you'll see where you are. Check that video out because it's coming along. To cleat or not to cleat? That is the question.
Hey, did Joan make any snacks for you today?
I haven't seen anything yet. We'll
guys
just have to
hungry?
wait and see what comes in the door.
Yeah. Okay, in the meantime, we have another magic mailbox. There might be some veggies in there.
Oh. From Benjamin Cody Henry on YouTube. Love your work as always. Thank you. Wanted to know how to enlarge ever so slightly the holes on my volume and tone knobs on a rear routed body. The tech who did the work didn't drill them large enough and screwed the pots in. Luckily, the holes are small so they can be enlarged, but I don't know the best way to do it. Well, there's, look up peg hole reamers. That's a long tapered reamer, and it can enlarge a hole very carefully. I would go from, in your case, I would start from the top, and I would use a chamfering tool. It's like a countersink for a drill, and very carefully just remove a little finish around the circle so that it doesn't tend to want to chip. And I wouldn't ream from inside up because that's going to cause more of a chip. I'd start from the top. I'd countersink that hole, ream it. I might use a wooden dowel, and I have, with sandpaper on it. Take a simple wooden dowel smaller than the hole, cut a little slot in it with the razor saw, stick a piece of paper in it and wrap it around and sand it. Or rat tail file, hardware store item. And still you'd want to work from the top down because if you came out, you'll get a chip. We have a countersink at StewMac called the No Chip Countersink. Check that out. It's perfect for what you're talking about. Magic mailbox.
Here we come. Just picking out a good one.
They're all good. She's picking out a good question.
They are all good. And
They're
we
all
want to
good.
take a moment to thank everyone maybe for all their questions, because
Did you hear that? Susan wants to thank everybody, and I do too, for sending the questions in, because this is fun for us. This is a different kind of lutherie. I really need to get an optivisor. It looks like peak fashion, from Drew.
what's the question?
I really need to get an optivisor. It's peak fashion. Well, I don't know about that, but it sure has helped me. If I'd had an optivisor in my 20s, I probably might not have needed glasses in my 40s from squinting and looking close. My optivisor I have taken and took two pieces of white plastic binding, heated it, and bent it. And then I glued it to two lenses. I have a number 4 and a number 2 power on this one. And got it screwed together. I never even cut off the screws. This is probably the 3rd or 4th one of these I've made in many years. But this is good because it's got 2 different ranges for me. This one's really in close. This one's more about here, which is good working distance. But having just one is cool too, but not as cool as 2. Definitely get an optivisor.
I want one.
Leo Fender always wore an optivisor of sorts. That's probably where I got the idea. I saw Leo Fender at the NAMM show way a long time ago, and he had an optivisor on.
Really?
That's probably what sparked it, really.
You're inspired by the fashion. Pass it along. Oh boy, here we come.
Where to place the Tune-O-Matic stop bar tailpiece for a Tune-O-Matic bridge.
Who's that from?
That's from Michael P. on YouTube. I would like to install a stop bar tailpiece on my guitar. It currently has a Tune-O-Matic bridge and a trapeze tailpiece. How far from the Tune-O-Matic bridge should I install the stop bar? Most stop bar tailpieces, are, like on a Les Paul 335, are 1.5 inches behind the center line of the bridge. Or I measured this out actually once a couple weeks ago. It was a similar question from a guy here in town. If it has pickups on it, you could measure 2 3/16 from the back edge of the humbucking pickups around. Or from the front edge of the nut with the long straight edge, you could go all the way from the nut to where you put the stop bar. And that would be 24 and 23 30-seconds to the center of a Tune-O-Matic bridge. And 26 and 3/16 to the stop bar, measuring from the front of the nut with a long straight edge. I wouldn't trust a carpenter's type of straight edge, you know. I mean, tape measure. I think it's not quite accurate enough. Or if I was to do that, what I do with the tape measure is I'll reel out 10 feet of what I'm done with, cut it off exactly at the 1 inch line, get rid of that little catch on the end, and use that to measure. If you don't, because the long straight edges are expensive, but you have to start knowing that you're not at 0. Make it, I used to have one right over there. So 1.5 inches behind the center of the bridge. Tune-O-Matic. How we doing out there?
Good. Are you willing to take another one from the live audience?
Sure, absolutely.
Cool. This one is
Right.
from TM Bridge. TM Bridge says, "Hi Dan, I'm a shade tree furniture woodworker. I'd like to start with luthier work. I was wondering what you think are the main differences between a traditional woodworking shop and a luthier shop."
Depends if the luthier is building guitars or repairing guitars. You can start with a smaller shop if you're repairing, because so many jobs can be done only with hand tools. And when you're starting from the ground up, you can start with very little tools and you buy them just for the job at hand. When I first made a nut for a guitar, I used a hacksaw blade and an X-Acto saw. I had all those things as a hobbyist, and graduated to actual files. I would go to the hardware store and get a file. To make my first 3/4 rounding file, I would get a hardware store file and grind it safe edges on the belt sander. As far as the difference between a cabinet shop and a guitar builder shop, it's still all in the small hand tools. We all use the same power tools. Drill press is important. Belt sander is important. To me, a table saw is important. Bandsaw is important. A joiner is important. For years, that's all I ever had, and I never even had all those. And I never had a joiner when I built my first guitars. And at the time back in Ann Arbor, I would go down to Fingerly's Lumber, and I could order a blank of mahogany and maple glued up, like having a skunk stripe down the neck, and they would run it through a planer for me. And eventually I started getting all those tools myself. We're going to have a lot of different tools, hand tools, in a guitar shop, though, that a cabinet maker just wouldn't need. Vice versa. Cabinet makers have all sorts of planes that we don't generally have until we learn about them and find out that many jobs can be done faster with a hand plane or a hand tool than it is to go set it up production-wise. And there's finish differences too.
He's saying thanks, and he's probably going to be building guitars.
You'll probably be having a great time if you already have a wood shop set up, man. Most of us started out from the ground up and eventually ended up having wood shops back in my day. I love tools. I'm still buying tools all the time. Magic mailbox. From Solus Umbra. Hey Dan, any tips on how to attach a through neck body to the body wings for maximum structural strength? Yeah, what I do, especially with flying V's, I've made a lot of flying V's. And you've got two pieces of wood that you've got to join together. It's not a neck through body, but the principle would be the same. Trying to glue up two flying V shapes, if it's already cut to a V shape, is a little tricky because they want to move on you. What I do is this. I take the piece of wood, I got two halves, and I stand it upright on a table saw, and I saw a blind saw slot. So it doesn't come out the ends. I set it down on the blade and stop when I get where I want to. And I would probably make that about a 1/4 inch thick. And I do it on both halves. So now each half has a slot in it that's probably going in 3/4 inch deep. And then I make a piece of wood that's got rounded edges, because your saw cut leaves a rounded edge as you stop. And that's going to be a 1/4 inch thick. And it's going to run most of the length of the body. And when I glue it up, I get glue on this side, glue on this side. I'll probably glue that. I slap that in there, stand it on the side, press the other side down, and then I glue it up. And that makes me feel like the glue joint's never going to separate. It's not going to fall in half. And for a flying V, it's a tricky shape to glue up. And what I do is I have 2x4 that has a same angle on it, and it's got sandpaper on this surface, so it kind of sticks to that wood. And then, since it's hard to have clamps that large, I cut steps into this, and that's gone. Steps into this. And that way I have a clamp that can span that whole width. I don't want to use a giant piece of wood to get a V, because this is good wood on that side. So I cut the V's and glue them together. I guess you would call that a spline. It works, and it's It's
Show that up for the folks.
so I got a slot in the side of two sides and a piece of wood that's going into it sideways and glued, and it holds them together and it keeps the two halves from not being level when it's glued up, and it keeps them from sliding back and forth. Thanks for the question. Hope that helped.
You're a good sketcher, Dan. Is that just natural, or so like were you always a good sketcher? Since
I
you
was
were a
raised
kid?
in a family with a dad that was a woodworker, businessman by day, but a carpenter, cabinet maker, and woodworker by night and weekends. And my mother was a graduate of U of M art school and did art all her life. So I was lucky that all 5 boys in my family grew up from a very young age with charcoals and oil paints and casings and anything. And my dad made 3 of us easels, our own beautiful easels, one Christmas year back in the 1950s. So I grew up as an artist, I guess. I was lucky.
That's awesome.
Plus, I took art class in school, and I took wood shop in junior high school. Man, it's hard to find a school that has a wood shop anymore.
I know.
I could have been a wood shop teacher, and I probably would have enjoyed that too. I've had 2 friends in my life that were wood shop teachers, and I got to hang around schools and was an older man. Back in Big Rapids, before I moved down here, I helped 3 people build electric guitars from Big Rapids High School, and 2 of them won state prize, and that was against places like Detroit and Grosse Pointe. And we made a Flying V, we made 2 Les Pauls, not all the same person, and they all excelled. And I didn't make it for them. They had a good wood shop teacher, but they would come to my shop in the afternoon, and I helped with the layout and show them real guitars.
Well, you've got all the apprentices here. I'd argue that you are already a woodshop teacher.
I guess that's right.
But I don't like
I
to
have a
argue
lot
with
of
you.
people that have been through my shop that are in business today. I counted them up one time, and it was over 20.
That's amazing.
There's your mailbox. From Julio Vasquez on YouTube. Does anyone know how to get the smell of cigarettes out of a guitar? It has a nitro finish. If you say out of, I'm thinking that it's an acoustic guitar, right? Otherwise, it would be off of. And I've gotten mold out of acoustic guitars in horrible cases. The case, I would put baking soda in a case, shake it up, set it outside, open it up, and leave it in the sun. And I would pour baking soda into a guitar and shake that up, and then put it in a garbage bag. And I've heard of lots of ways of doing it. I think one good one I've never tried, but is put kitty litter in the guitar, a bunch of it. Shake it up, put it in a bag, that'll take it out. Or some of those downy strips that you put in the clothes dryer, that absorbs smell. One person I know says they put coffee, not coffee grounds, but coffee beans inside of a guitar and just let it sit for a month, and they put apple chips with it too. Quartered up in apples and coffee. It would smell better than cigarette smell.
Yeah.
I know that.
I imagine so.
Try baking soda. If you're afraid to dump baking soda in the guitar and it's hard to get out, open the box up and set it in there and put it in a bag. It's just like you put baking soda in the refrigerator to get the funky smell out of the refrigerator. My mom used to always do that. So does my wife.
That probably used to be a huge problem back when you could smoke inside bars and.
Oh, sometimes I've had guitars in that I turn them away.
Yeah.
Or I'll put them in the garage and leave the case there. And on the outside of a guitar, geez, I don't know. I'd wash it and I would leave it out of a case. I wouldn't keep it in a case. If you can set something in the sunlight and it doesn't hurt it, that'll help a lot. But it's a hard battle.
Well, we only have enough time for a couple more, so we'll take just a couple more.
Vacuum instead of go bars from anarcho-luthierist. I've been toying with the idea of using a vacuum bag with a radius board in lieu of go bars. Any thoughts? Sounds good to me. I've never tried it. Why wouldn't it work? There's a great cabinet maker outside of town here in Athens, Tom Bennett. He's the master, and he uses vacuum bags. He'll use giant vacuum bag and glue up his own door panels with exotic woods on the outside, and he puts that in the vacuum bag, puts the pump on, and it sucks it right down. It's amazing. I think vacuum bags are awesome. When I was in London in 1999, my wife and I went to a trade show there, and we was in the Birmingham trade show. I visited John Smith, and that was from the Gordon Smith Guitar Company in Manchester, and he had a vacuum. I have photos of this. If we ever get this going where I could show photos, I'd love it. He would put a laminate top on his solid body Les Paul style guitars into it was a big inner tube, like an airplane truck, giant inner tube, and he had a hose that ran outside through the door to a truck that was running, and he used the manifold on the truck as a vacuum. And I saw him do it, and it would suck it down, and it worked. I toured a lot of shops in England in 1999. We drove to about 17 different shops, and man, if you could ever do that, what a wonderful country. So everything's done by hand over there. Not everything, but that same John Smith had a dust collector. You'd never figure out. He had a transom that opened over the window going outside, and there was a stand like a hat rack, and he had this cloth wind sack from an airport, the wind sack that you see which way the wind's going, and a fan blowing into that. And that was his dust collector.
Wild.
It was wild.
One more?
Sure. It's I got as much time as anybody has.
Speaking from across the pond.
Oh, here's something from across the pond. How cool. From Patrick O'Sullivan on YouTube. I'm a big fan of the channel from across the pond in Ireland. The channel meaning not the English channel, the TV channel. My question is, an original 1970 Ampeg Dan Armstrong. I find it hard to accurately intonate the guitar as it has a wooden saddle with a fretboard bridge. I know Dan Electro uses something similar. Is there a way to improve the intonation on these? I had a Dan Electro U2 1956, a U2 pickup. I probably should never have sold it, but I sold it to my dear friend Elliot John Conley that worked with me for years, and he has it in safekeeping. And I know the problem. So you have this rosewood bridge piece, and it has a guitar fret in it, and the strings come up over that, and that's your saddles. Take a fret wire, get a good tall one, and cut the bottom of the tang off and smooth this flat, so then you'll have a long flat bottom piece of fret. And I would cut that into 6 pieces and individually take those little pieces and set them under your guitar strings, tune them to pitch, and slide these around. This is how I come up with the tool that I like at StewMac. It's called the Intonator. It's got a bracket that holds adjustable pieces that slide under the strings. And then you can slide these to and fro and find out exactly where it's in tune to your ear, and then mark that location. And then you could glue these down. You could take real fret wire and cut little slots and tap them in. You could take a piece of bone and cut it to that shape so you'd have a little staggered piece like a compensated saddle. That's what I'd do. The simple thing would be just to glue those pieces down with some super glue.
Cool, Dan. We are out of time. There are a few people who are asking about the Les Paul trade with Mike Bloomfield, but
we can do that next time.
We'll do it next time.
I traded Mike Bloomfield my gold top, my 59 burst for his gold top, 1967, the summer I went to San Francisco, and he gave me $100 extra. and I would have done anything he asked. He was a hero.
We'll have to say our goodbyes.
So I'm saying goodbye, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for helping me mess up my shop. I hope this happens next week.
Thanks,
Tune in.
y'all.
Love ya.
Take care, everyone.